It's Cinco de Mayo. Woo! Oh, sorry. It's the 5th of May, or Cinco de Mayo, or yeah, it's exciting, right? Today we're going to talk about, excuse me, glacial or glaciers and aeolian, which are wind, spelt with an E or an A, systems and the types of landforms they create. So I've put together a lovely video with cute little videos. Okay, I haven't put together a video, put together a slideshow that includes videos. Help us learn a little bit about these topics.
Iceland, home to some of the most breathtaking landscapes in the world, but also some of the most harsh conditions known to man. About 1 year ago, DJI came to Iceland with Good Morning America to livestream a volcanic eruption straight into the homes of millions of viewers. Having captured the extreme heat of a volcano, we're now here to capture the raw power of ice, using the Inspire with the new X5 camera to create another DJI first, live streaming from one of the largest glaciers in Europe. We arrived in Reykjavik just before New Year's Eve 2015, right as a massive blizzard engulfed the city. The weather made an already difficult journey even more dangerous. The roads were covered in ice, but our experienced drivers brought us safely to and from the location each day.
In January, daylight in Iceland is very limited. You get about 4 hours if you're lucky, if the weather conditions are good. So you have to utilize this small time as good as possible.
To give ourselves enough time, our day started in complete darkness. We prepped the equipment, packed everything and loaded the vans in sub-zero temperatures.
The glacier presented a number of challenges for us. Our first day here, we experienced winds gusting up to 100 miles an hour, and it's made the production much more difficult than expected.
One of the biggest challenges was deciding on the right day for the live show. We had to make a trade-off between wind and lighting conditions.
We hiked up the glacier, which was an exhausting trip, but everything was so portable that we could get it onto our backpacks and walk up a glacier. The main topic for ABC was to shoot climbers going down a giant crevasse to show how the changes of the climate affect the glaciers.
Go for it! Go ahead and start ice climbing. All right, so the guys are just now starting their descent.
The director used the two Inspire 1 drones to get various angles of the action and showcase depth of the crevasse.
We're about 10 meters down.
The climbers were also fascinated by the possibilities to show and film areas that were previously inaccessible by normal camera equipment.
When we were doing the climbing, when you looked at it from above, absolutely mind-blowing.
What's happening there is felt all around the world.
Surrounded by crystal clear black and blue ice.
Never before had such images been captured and streamed live. In between the preparations for the Good Morning America show, we had time to explore the vast landscapes of Iceland. We filmed black sand beaches. It was an amazing experience to see the ice blocks melting on the beach with the harsh ocean in the backdrop. We stopped by several epic waterfalls and had the chance to see them from an aerial view. Another great location was the glacier where part of the movie Interstellar was filmed.
We also used the car mount for the Osmo with the X5 camera to get some really nice shots of driving through those landscapes, and we even shot car to air with the Osmo.
DJI and Good Morning America wanted to show the impact of warming climates to the world. There is no better way of illustrating that than standing on a melting glacier.
So I start with that, which is one of the places with the largest glaciers that are still around. And now I'm going to show you a clip from a movie called Chasing Ice. So a documentarian went out and was filming the glaciers to try and talk about global warming and that the glaciers were melting, and captured this on camera. It's the largest calving event ever filmed, and people were there to see it. It's kind of like if a tree falls on a forest, does it make a sound? If no one is there to see the calving, what does it really look like? How big are we talking? When you talk about, events like this. So this is another good clip I wanted to show you.
I'm on the phone with Jim on one of our regular check-ins. Jim, nothing's happening.
Hey, Jim. It's going well. We had some serious bouts of wind, but other than that, things are fairly well set up here. We've got some continuous time lapse going.
It's starting, Adam. I think. Adam, it's starting.
Oh wait, Jim, this is the big piece is starting to calve. Let me call you back.
Call him back.
Okay, bye.
Still going? Yeah. In that V section right there. Holy shit, look at that big bird rolling. All four running, right?
Yeah. Look at that. You see how, look at the whole thing.
Calving face is 300, sometimes 400 feet tall. Pieces of ice were shooting up out of the ocean 600 feet and then falling. The only way that you can really try to put it into scale with human reference is if you imagine Manhattan. And all of a sudden, all of those buildings just start to rumble and quake and peel off and just fall over and roll around. This whole massive city just breaking apart in front of your eyes. We're just observers, these two little dots on the side of the mountain. And we watched and recorded the largest witness calving event ever caught on tape.
So how big was this calving event that we just looked at? We'll resort to some illustrations again to give you a sense of scale. It's as if the entire lower tip of Manhattan broke off, except that the thickness, the height of it, is equivalent to buildings that are 2.5 or 3 times higher than they are. That's a magical, miraculous, horrible, scary thing. I don't know that anybody's really seen the miracle and horror of that. It took 100 years for it to retreat 8 miles from 1900 to 2000. From 2000 to 2010, it retreated 9 miles. So in 10 years, it retreated more than it had in the previous 100.
Oops. So we start by looking at large glaciers so that you get an idea. Oh, sorry. Calving it's a natural process. It usually is not caught on film because it happens all the time. It's the process of a piece of the glacier or the iceberg falling away. So it's like the ice just breaks. Usually it happens, it's a natural process. So water forms a fjord and then it kind of melts down and separates it from the rest, and then it just kind of moves away. So remember that glaciers, in order to be considered glaciers, must be moving. And so because of that movement, there's a natural process. So this is going to be at the terminus, the end. It usually happens at the end. In this particular case, as you saw, it's over water, which is why they're able to fully rotate. So yeah, so I wanted to start by looking at large glaciers so that you could understand that the world used to be covered in, well, large sections of the world used to be covered in a glacier. During the last ice age, all of Canada and the upper part of the United States was just covered in ice. And when that all melted, we got lots of remnants. Sorry, I went the wrong way on my slide. Of what was left behind. So nowadays we have a lot of what we call alpine glaciers. So these are glaciers that are in the higher parts of the elevational regions where it's super duper cold. So you can have a glacier, and glaciers form when snow accumulates over a long period of time. So you have snow and then it melts a little bit and it recrystallizes. If you remember the video on weather with the snow and the guy trying to take the sword out of snow, remember that those crystals are growing because of their compaction, because of the changes in temperature inside and all that good stuff. And that eventually gets to be so heavy that it starts to move via gravity. So it's like frozen water and sand and dust and a whole bunch of other stuff and gravity. And so it can create these amazing scenes. For example, Yosemite National Park. So I love Yosemite National Park. I feel very generous that I got to spend so much time in Yosemite National Park as a kid. My uncle, my dad's brother, was the judge inside the park. So he was the magistrate. So when we got in trouble, you had to go see my uncle. He had his license plate frame that said Yosemite Law, it's the pits. So if you remember the beginning of my class and like physical geography, it's the pits, same idea. So, you know, kind of, so what glaciers leave behind are these U-shaped valleys. So about 2 million years ago, this whole area was covered in ice. And eventually that ice moved and left us this stunning scenery. So these domes, so this whole thing used to be just one giant granite, what we call batholith. So there was just a giant granite thing here. We've got hanging valleys, you've got domes that have been cut in half. You've obviously got this giant granite El Capitan and things like that. So there are currently only 2 glaciers left in Yosemite. They are the Lyell and the McClure Glacier. This is not the McClure Glacier. That's pretty funny. It's behind it. I don't know why. Oh, no, it's not. I don't know why this picture is here. That's really kind of funny that that's there. Apparently I messed up. I apologize. So these glaciers are rather small. And so here is a guy talking, well, a national park ranger who's going to talk about the glaciers.
While many people think of Yosemite Valley as a great place to look at evidence of glaciers, as you come up into the high country of Yosemite, Olmsted Point, Tuolumne Meadows, you find even better evidence for the recent passage of ice. But to see the living glaciers still at work at the crest of the Sierra, there's nothing that compares to seeing this in action. Here is a field of ice formed from millions and millions of snowflakes slowly working on the mountainside, sliding downhill, just like they have off and on for tens and hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, in the Sierra Nevada, you really only get glaciers at the very highest elevations. Near the highest peaks in the range, they're usually tucked up into cirques that mostly face north or northeast. So they're generally pretty remote places, hard to get to. So I'm standing here on the summit of Mount McClure and looking out over the Lyell Glacier. That's Mount Lyell right there, the highest point in Yosemite National Park, just over 13,100 feet. And beneath it is the Lyell Glacier, which is the largest glacier in the park. It's the second largest glacier in all the Sierra Nevada and the largest glacier on the western slope of the mountain range.
And there's no trees at this elevation. There's not much soil. There aren't many plants. It's a fairly barren landscape, often windy, intense solar energy, intense ultraviolet. So not a friendly place unless you really like this alpine zone and you want to see a glacier.
There are some elements of danger here. This is a really dynamic place. The ice is moving, the rocks are moving, and to explore it, you have to be careful. The moraines are fairly unstable, so there are a lot of loose rocks there. You can tip a rock over onto yourself if you're not careful. For the most part, the Lyell Glacier is sort of big and open and easy to get around on, but it's still steep and slippery.
It's late summer, early autumn, and this is kind of a typical scene up on the Sierra glaciers, what we call sun cups. It's these fins, steep fins of snow and ice, and they make it really challenging for travel.
The McClure Glacier has some big crevasses and big holes in it, and so you actually need to be really careful moving around on that ice.
Right now we're about 2/3 of the way up the McClure Glacier. It's a pretty gentle slope, lots of sun cups. It steepens up above us. There's signs of crevasses starting to show some open gaps.
This is a crevasse here on the McClure Glacier, and a crevasse is basically a big fissure or chasm in a glacier that forms as the glacier's moving downslope. The downslope side will move a little bit faster than the upslope side and create essentially a tear in the glacier. And these crevasses can be 100 or many hundreds of feet deep in some cases.
One of the really interesting things about the McClure Glacier is that at the toe of the glacier is an ice cave, and you can get into that cave and see the bottom of the glacier, see where the glacier is sitting on the bedrock. And so a lot of these features that we see in Yosemite that are 15 or 20,000 years old, we can see forming today underneath the McClure Glacier.
So by definition, a glacier is a mass of ice that's moving, flowing and sliding down slope. in the case of the McClure Glacier here, we've measured that movement by tracking the stakes that we've put in through time, and we know that it moves about 20 feet a year. But there's another way to get a sense of the movement of a glacier, and that's to actually come down inside of it in a place called the Bergschrund, which is a big crevasse that forms between the cliff and the glacier itself. Oh, that's pretty cool. Well, right now we're in the Bergschrund of the McClure Glacier. We've just rappelled probably 25 feet, and we're really kind of inside the glacier now. This right here is bedrock. This is the head wall of the cirque that the glacier's formed in. And this side here is the ice. And so this right here is a really good demonstration and visualization of glaciers sliding. This wall behind me here used to be flush with the bedrock, and it's pulled away, leaving this space and giving us a very visual demonstration of how glaciers move.
So I've been coming onto the Mount Lyell Glacier for 20 years. I've seen it change from the first time I came up here till now, and gradually I've watched it get smaller, more rock show, the classic features of glacier kind of slipping away, and it's almost like watching Half Dome melt away or dissolve.
Well, these glaciers pose an interesting challenge for resource managers in the National Park Service. They are actively retreating, they are changing very quickly, but there's not a lot that we here in Yosemite National Park can do about that, because every indication is that these glaciers are retreating in response to a globally changing climate. And so everybody's kind of responsible for trying to manage these glaciers in that sense.
So things have changed, not just in the parks environment, but outside the parks environment, that affect what we consider a very protected land. Our Yosemite is protected, it's designated wilderness, it's a World Heritage Site, but it's not disconnected from the rest of the world. And the sense is that this glacier will disappear within a few decades, and that will be a loss to the wholeness of our environment of Yosemite.
The Lyell Glacier here, as it retreats, will just keep moving up the slope until it finally gets right underneath the summit there, and it will disappear. And there are a number of other plants and animals that are doing effectively the same thing. And the ones that are living at the very highest peaks in the park, eventually they've got nowhere to go. I mean, that's the top of the park right there at Mount Lyell. And for the things that are up there right now, when the temperatures get a lot warmer, they're not going to be able to go anywhere. And like the Lyell Glacier here, they too may disappear.
In the biggest sense, it is just cool that Yosemite has glaciers. To me, it's an attractant. It's an element of Yosemite that adds to its wildness, its mystery, its antiquity and ancientness.
You don't have to go to Alaska or Greenland or Antarctica to see ice. You can go to Yosemite National Park and hike for a day up to the highest peaks and see these glaciers.
Oops, here we are. So again, a glacier is a thick mass of ice that forms over hundreds of thousands of years. They originate on land from accumulation, compaction, and the recrystallization, like I said, the sword thing. They form in mountain and river valleys. They form across the lowlands and flat areas. And they have different names based on where they're at. So if they form in the mountains, they're called alpine glaciers. If they form in a flat area, they're called Piedmont glaciers. If it forms in an upland across an entire plateau, it's called an ice cap, like the North Pole has an ice cap, Antarctica is an ice cap. And so this is a time lapse. We've seen enough of glaciers moving, but I wanted to show you this one where you can see normal movement, unlike the calving event, which is semi-abnormal. So.
Although glacial ice is a solid, it actually flows like a river. It's incredible to think that this much ice is constantly on the move. A time-lapse camera shows that Nygårdsbreen's surface ice travels at around 275 meters per year, carving away the rock as it goes. When you're here, the only clues you see of the glacier's movement are crevasses. Deep gashes that split open the surface of the ice.
So I just wanted to show you the movement. So so that particular glacier, they did that using time-lapse photography. Moved about 900 feet a year. She said 275, so it's about about 900 feet a year, which is pretty good. The mountains near us, the Sierras, grow at about 2 inches a year. So 900 feet is pretty decent. And again, it's a natural process. They're supposed to do that. So I don't want to confuse the naturalness of the glacier with the fact that they are retreating at a faster rate than they should. So they're kind of losing their power to do their natural thing, which is to carve rock. But you know, so I'm going to save this one for, so glaciation is a very important part of the hydrologic cycle. So water is stored as ice. It's part of the water cycle. It contributes to rivers flowing. So again, I don't want to get us, you know, too far in the weeds about the fact that, oh, this shouldn't be happening. Well, it should be, maybe not at the rate it's happening. But glaciers move. That's what they're supposed to do. It's the melting and what we call the receding or the large calving events that we're kind of concerned about, that these will be gone. The Lyell Glacier, as they said in the video, is the largest glacier in Yosemite National Park. They're seeing less movement of the glacier, so it's not like moving anymore. It's receding up the hill. They're retreating at unprecedented rates, and this has impact on the world. It contributes to rising sea levels and areas like, you know, once this melts, then it is gone. Then there'll be dry land here, and then the water that falls or the snow that falls will just, you know, eventually make it to the river, and they won't be replenished as much as they were in the past. So this is a picture from 1901. You can see, you know, how far up the glacier goes and how thick it is. So, and this is what it looked like in 2011. Over here, it's almost completely gone, where there used to be this large patch. There's another glacier place that we have. We have an entire national park named for them. So I wanted to show you kind of sort of what's going on there. There was an article that came out in 2017 CNN that said that there used to be, you know, Glacier National Park used to, you know, it was named that because it had tons of glaciers. There are only 37 glaciers left at Glacier National Park, and those 37 glaciers have lost about 85% of their size and shrink at about 40%. So eventually, unfortunately, it's very possible that the glaciers will be gone, and so we'll have a national park called Glacier National Park with no glaciers, and we'll have Joshua Tree National Park with no Joshua trees. So yeah, we're you know, we'll talk more about that in the future. So this is showing the perimeter of some of the glaciers in Glacier National Park. So the light colors are in 1960s, and then the dark colors is 2015. So this red color is what its size in 2015. So I went the wrong way. Here's the Speary Glacier. So again, this is how big it used to be. This is how big it is now. So you can see that these glaciers are retreating. The story does not end there.
There are roughly 200,000 glaciers worldwide, each represented by a small yellow dot on this globe. Here we take a closer look at glaciers in North and South America, where scientists found roughly 25% of the world's melting took place between 2003 and 2010. We begin in South America, where glaciers in Patagonia lost 23 billion tons of ice each year. In the Northern Hemisphere, glaciers in southern Alaska show annual losses that total 46 billion tons. And over in the Canadian Arctic, 67 billion tons of ice melted each year.
I want to point out something, and I'll go back and freeze frame it. The red means the glaciers are growing. So this is an interesting thing. So let's go back to this little spot, right?
And over in the Canadian Arctic.
Here. Okay, so blue means they're getting smaller, and red means they're getting bigger. So you see this? All right, so if you ever watched An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore talks about the jet stream, and that if this ice melts, that the jet stream will be slowed. And this is evidence of the fact that it's getting colder. The fact that they're accumulating more snow is because it's colder. It's not getting smaller, it's getting bigger. And that has to do with the fact that the Gulf Stream, which usually comes up and kind of keeps the area in Europe warmer, is slowing down. And so it's not able to warm this. So in theory, if this all melts and that Gulf Stream stops going up there, we could plunge most of, definitely Northern Europe, but most of Europe into another ice age. And all of those people have to move somewhere. So doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. We as human beings, unlike plants and animals, well, I guess animals can move because we're animals. But anyways, unlike plants, can't just go somewhere else. So again, climate change is only a problem if you care where you hang your hat. So, so now we're going to talk about aeolian landforms. So I wanted to just give you some background on glaciers, show you some pictures, talk about some of the glacier things. So they mentioned things like cirques, which are the bowl site features. You'll learn about arates, which are, the mountain features, and horns, like the Matterhorn was formed by glaciers moving in different things. There's also topics like erratics, which are rocks that aren't made of the same stuff, that just get deposited in a weird place. And so I wanted to talk about some of the wind landforms because those are a little more of my favorite, because it deals with the desert, and we all know that I love the desert. So we'll start with this cute geographic. What are aeolian? Like I said, spelled with an A or without. Sometimes they leave the little A off, but it means the same thing.
The surface of the Earth is continually shaped by powerful forces of water, wind, and ice. These three agents are responsible for the processes of erosion, transportation, and deposition. Material is worn away and removed from one location by erosion, then carried along sometimes for huge distances by transport.
Remember, I talked about weathering, erosion, and transportation, and that people often confuse them? Okay, don't be confused. Remember, erosion is not weathering. So he's showing weathering, but he's calling it erosion. Just cautionary tale. Okay, let me go back.
The surface of the Earth is continually and placed in another location when energy is lost by deposition. Processes that are carried out by the wind are referred to as aeolian, named after the Greek god of the wind, Aeolus. These processes are particularly important to the physical geography of dry and barren areas such as deserts. The vast expanse of bare rock surfaces, strong trade winds, and endless supplies of dry, loose sediment found in arid environments come together to create this strange and spectacular landscape. There are two types of aeolian erosion: deflation and abrasion. Deflation happens when fine, loose sediment is picked up and carried away by the wind. Arid landscapes are very vulnerable to this as they lack any moisture or vegetation to hold the soil and sand together. Any rocks that were in the sand will be left behind to form a desert pavement. Abrasion happens when material carried in the wind is blasted at rock surfaces. This causes them to wear away and any rough edges become smoother and flatter. Desert rocks are susceptible to abrasion because they don't have a protective layer of soil or vegetation, so they are constantly exposed to the wind. Abrasion is most effective up to 1.5 meters from the ground because the wind carries more material at this height. Rocks that have flat sides due to abrasion are called ventifacts. The wind transports material in three different ways: by suspension, saltation, and surface creep. Very fine sand that has been picked up by deflation is suspended in the wind and can be carried for very long.
I pause to remind you, this is very much like water. So when we talked about fluvial processes, we talked about suspension, saltation. So just keep that in mind. And the picture looks the same. So that's the nice thing about it. A non-confusing concept. Whether the stuff is moving and it's small and it's suspended in the air. So this is what made, those are like when you look out and you see like a dust cloud, or you look at the river and it's like murky and you can't really see the bottom. That is stuff held in suspension. Okay.
Distances for hundreds or even thousands of miles. If any rocks are encountered along the way, this suspended material can be used for abrasion. Saltation is when particles between 0.1 and 1 millimeter in size bounce along the ground up to 1.5 meters high. Saltating material can also be used for abrasion, and this explains why rocks get eroded at a faster rate closer to the ground. Surface creep involves larger particles that are too heavy to be lifted by the wind, those bigger than 1 millimeter in diameter. They are pushed and rolled along the ground, and they contribute to the formation of sand dunes. When the wind loses energy, it deposits the material it's been carrying. This can happen when the wind speed drops or it meets an obstacle. Fine sediment, known as loess, can build up in the sheltered area behind rocks and vegetation. As the obstacle gets larger, more material is deposited. This is how sand dunes can start to form. And this is how desert landscapes are shaped by the wind. Did you know you can download a revision leaflet to accompany?
All right, so Aeolian landforms shaped by the wind, named for the Greek god Aeolus. There are a number of features that are distinct to both erosion and deposition of sediment. So remember, erosion is the movement, and deposition is obviously the depositing of stuff. So you've got sand dunes, which you can see here. There's these things called loess deposits, which we'll talk about in a second. Ventifacts, yard banks, deflation hollows, and desert pavement. So these all involve weathering, erosion, and deposition. So of sediment by the wind. And they occur in a variety of environments, including the coastal zone. So, but more importantly, they also have, so you can have like beach sand dunes. Same thing, wind is going to, transport material to a spot and create sand dunes. You can also find them, most often you find them in arid environments like the desert, and you can also find them in agricultural areas. So the common things about these areas, if you think about it, there's not a lot of existing ground cover or vegetation. There's a lot of, sands and silts and clays to kind of pick up and move around at the beach, right? there's you know, you don't have a lot of trees growing there because everything's kind of moving around. You don't have a lot of trees growing in sand dune areas again because there's a lot of stuff moving around. All right, so there are different types of sand dunes. So these are some of the different types. They have to do with the direction the wind's blowing, how fast the wind is blowing, how often the wind is blowing. But they create these, sometimes they'll create just one sand dune. Other times they'll create like vast fields of sand dunes as far as the eye can see. All right. A Loess formation, he explained it in the video as happening on the backside of a feature. This is typically what you find in river valleys, places like that. The best example of this wind-blown sediment we have it in the world is in China and then in our Midwest. So this is a picture of the Midwest. If you see anything that it's elevated, it's probably a Loess deposit because the plains are really kind of, well, they're plain, but they're flat. So if there is something that's elevated, it's probably there was a rock or something, and then the wind kind of hit it, slows down, and drops the sediment nearby. So you've got your floodplains, you've got wind sweeping down, and the lighter particles kind of move up the hill, and the heavier particles kind of get deposited nearby. So this is where you find the distribution of Loess formations. So Loess is like a hill of loosely compacted, typically like a yellowish wind-blown sediment. So those are depositional features. Sand dunes are depositional features. There's what's left behind. There's also erosional features. So things that, sorry, not erosional, weathered features. For example, ventifacts. So this is a ventifact. These are geoformic features of rocks that are ablated or pitted or, you know, etched or grooved or polished by wind, sand, and it can also be ice crystals. So if you're in an area and there's a lot of ice, if you remember the weather video where he talked about, you know, ice crystals forming, they look cute, but if you zoomed in, they are rather jagged. And so they can do some damage if they're moving around really fast. I don't know if you've ever been like snow skiing or in a snowstorm or in a blizzard or something like that, but that stuff, in addition to being cold on your face, actually you can get what they call wind burn. That wind burn is from those crystals moving around and like spraying across your face. So your face is being ablated by the movement of these things, and it can also happen in ice crystals in a snowy area. So these are two different types of ventifacts. And again, if you recall, the stuff closer to the ground is going to be more eroded than the stuff at, more weathered than the stuff at the top, and that's because the size of the particles is larger down here, so it's able to do a lot more damage than it can up here. So this is in Death Valley, and this is in the White Desert in Egypt. This is chalk, which is a mineral formation. Well, obviously, it's not just the stuff you saw in little sticks that you ride on the sidewalk with. It actually is a naturally forming mineral. So these are yard dangs. Yard dangs they look almost like a ventifact, but they are in a long, compact ridge in the direction of the prevailing wind. So the wind kind of goes this way and gets rid of all the stuff in between, leaving behind these little fins. A lot of times students will confuse a yard dang with a ventifact. And the best way, in my opinion, is ventifacts are usually small, like we saw here, right? These are ventifacts, right? These are long, landform sized shaped things. They're huge, and they go in the direction of the wind. This one is formed because the wind can't figure out which direction it wants to go. So it blew this way and scraped this side of the rock off, and then it blew this way and it scraped this side of the rock off, and then it blew this way and it scraped that side of the rock off, and it at one time scraped the other way. And so these are little pyramids. Same thing here. You know, you're like, well, that's pretty big. Yeah, but it's not in a big long line. Okay. Ventifacts are small. They don't have a stick. See the little V? So that's the size of this. And yard dangs, long. See, they're long, like the tail of a Y, right? So that's my little hint for the day. These are what we call deflation hollows or blowout dunes. That's when the wind scoops out the loose material and it leaves this little hollow. Sometimes the hollows get filled with water, sometimes not so much. Sometimes the hollows get too hollow and they turn into arches. So, you know, the wind just keeps eroding and abrading this area here until it gets to the other side, creates little tunnels, things like that. This is desert pavement. He showed this in the little short video. All of the loose sediment gets blown away and the bigger rocks like settle down and settle down. And so over time, they get kind of shaken or blown into place and get matted down by wind and animals and things like that. So this is a picture of, you know, what it looked like before, and you can see that there's like sand particles separating the larger particles, or clay or silts and things like that. Those get blown away, and over time it kind of just settles down and creates this. So if you remember, I think we talked about the settling of the Central Valley over time. Same kind of idea, only instead of, you know, removing sand via wind, right, or clays or silts or fine particles, we took the water out from underneath, which allowed the stuff on top to kind of compact. Similar idea, only so what gets left behind is this like pavementy stuff. We call it desert pavement. So what's this? What's this? What's this? There's something in the air. What's this? What's this? There's white. Oh, sorry. It's a ventifact. Yay. Okay, this is the last slide. Isn't that exciting? I'm excited for us. I always worry. I could have shown that video. I always think I can't, but oh well, I can go back to it. Now we don't need to watch the video. Who needs to watch the video? I don't need to watch the video. All right, let's see. Let's see what we're learning this week, or what we have to do this week. So we have our 2 chapters, we have a discussion and a quiz. The quiz is going to cover the past 2 weeks worth of stuff. So, so this is on landforms. Let me see what the discussion's about. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I love this video. I'm going to watch it later on. I haven't seen it in like a year. Again, we used to watch it together. Now we don't because we're not together. So the video is a Nova video or PBS or both, I guess. It's called Making North America Origins. It's you're going to watch the video. You're going to make connections to stuff that you've learned in the course. They're going to talk about some secrets. What did you think that was the most interesting one to discover and why? Don't forget to reply to others. Make it sound like you watched the whole hour-long film, which you would have had we been together in a room, only we wouldn't have had popcorn. So maybe you can grab some popcorn and a friend, or, you know, someone who lives with you, and you're like, hey, let's watch this great video, because watching things together makes it all the more fun. I'm just saying, you know, you don't want to go through life all by yourself all the time. You know, sharing is caring, and, you know, it's a nice educational video learning about how North America came to be on a geologic thing. So not the, uh-oh, the link doesn't work. That's great. Okay, well, I guess I have to fix that. So I will make sure that that gets fixed. Glad I clicked on that. Ooh, a little birdie's like, click on the link, click on the link. I'm like, why? You can't see what I'm talking about, but the link in your discussion right now is not working. So I will make sure that that works because it should work, but it doesn't. Does anybody have any questions for the old teacher? That's me.
I have a quick question, actually.
Okay, go for it.
So a project, I remember you emailed me that I didn't have it shared, and we shared it now. Is it too late to like
No,
get credit?
I just haven't gone back and regraded
Okay,
it yet.
perfect. I'll just wait. All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
don't. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just haven't gone back. I will get back to it. I promise. I just haven't. Okay, now let me make sure that works. Thank you for asking. I should have made that clear because I had seen a couple of emails come in and I'm like, I just haven't got back to it. Oh, grabbed. Okay, cool. So when you click on the link, it's going to ask you, to subscribe to Nova or something like that. Just say you're already subscribed. It doesn't even ask for anything. It just say, yeah, I'm already there. Like, hello. And if you have to put in your local PBS station, it's KCET. So unless you live down in Orange County, in which case it's KOC something or other, KPOC or I don't know. Just pick KCET. Doesn't matter. It could be KCOC, but I can't remember. It's channel 50. I know that in Orange County. But that's all it should ask. So this came out in 2005. This Making North America Origins. I guess I could share this screen instead, and then you can see what I'm talking about. So it's 54 minutes long. And it talks about how the continent was shaped and how it's shaped us. Because remember, geography is the study of Earth and how humans interact with it. And remember, the human environmental interaction is a two-way street, going back to like the first week of class. So how does the planet shape us and how do we shape the planet? And so it's just a really, in my opinion, as crazy as I am, it's one of the better videos that I like to show in class. Because I don't normally show a lot of videos in class because they're so long and I have to watch them 3 times. But this one I love watching 3 times a year. Well, actually 6 times because I watch it 3 times in the spring and 3 times in the, if I'm lucky, only 3 times in the fall. But I usually teach more geography sections in the fall. So. All right. Any other questions? All right. So stop sharing. Fantabulousness. All right. Well, that's all I have for this week. Woo! Yay! Everybody have a great week. Hopefully everything else works. I'll take a look at the quiz because I know that apparently, I think last week's quiz was all messed up. And if it was, don't worry, I'll just not pay attention to it. But there were a lot of problems last week with the quiz. I don't know. I kept going in and saying, yes, here are the quiz questions. And then people are like, I don't see any quiz questions. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm done fighting the good fight. So if you didn't take the quiz or you got a 0 on the quiz because you took the quiz and there were no questions, I'll just go out, take out your answers and we'll just pretend it never existed if that's what happened. So I'm sure if you took the quiz, you didn't score a 0. So and I don't want to hold that against you. So I'll fix it. In the end, it'll all be okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end. All right. So y'all have a good week. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording in case people have